Okay, hi, welcome. My name is Dion. I am the nutrition consultant for Choices Markets at our Abbotsford location, and it is my pleasure to have you here for our event, Biome Shaping Humans, with our guest speaker, Zahra Tromsness. So, Zahra is an active member of the College of Dietitians of British Columbia with more than 10 years of clinical experience working with patients living with cancer, undergoing surgery, struggling with autoimmune disorders, diabetes, and gastrointestinal disorders. Zahra is a nutrition therapist and a low FODMAP diet expert who holds a certificate from Monash University. Zahra is committed to continuing professional development and frequently attends conferences and workshops to enhance her knowledge and skills. The focus of her practice is digestive health, functional gut disorders, including irritable bowel syndrome, gluten-related disorders, and inflammatory bowel disease. So before I hand it over to Zahra, I just want to go over a couple things. So this here is a nutrition dollar, or a nutrition buck as we call it. If you are here live stream tonight, after the event, you will be eligible for one of these, as well as 20% off of off of Zahra's services. So to get that information, just look for the link that will come after the event. There'll be a quick survey for you to fill out, and it will ask you for your physical mailing address. And that is because this coupon will actually come to you by mail within about 30 days. So after Zahra's done speaking, we will open it up for questions. And that will be done through the YouTube live chat. So in order to do that, you will need to have a YouTube account just to submit questions through the chat. Any questions that we can't get to, or if you were unable to ask, those can actually be submitted to Zahra through her website. And her website is gutlovingdietitian.com. So that's wonderful. Slides will also be available that from the event tonight on her website in a couple of weeks. So with that, welcome, Zahra. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dion, and welcome everyone. It's fantastic that so many of you gave up your evening to spend some online time with me. So I am going to share my screen here, and then we can start. Just one sec. There we are. Put it on full screen. There we are. So this is a massive, very popular topic these days. So obviously, in the time that we've got together, I can't cover everything, but what I will try to do is to talk about some of the really key sort of stuff that we need to remember. Things like what fiber is, what fiber does, and how it impacts our health. So what I would like to mention in the very beginning is that there are things that we know, and there's a lot that we don't know. We are at the tip of the iceberg. And so I think it's very important that we make sure that we are getting the science-based evidence and get to an understanding that there is still so much that we don't know. I think it's important that we don't jump onto the bandwagon too quickly and not understand exactly what the research is showing, because what I'm seeing a lot on social media is non-evidence-based practice being encouraged. So hopefully tonight I'll give you some good foundation, and then you can make really empowered decisions for yourself and your family. So moving on, this is just a little overview of some of the topics that I'll cover tonight. We will talk about how digestion works. Because that's not the focus of the topic tonight, that will be a very brief part of this presentation. But we will talk a lot about the gut microbiome, what it is, what different factors influence it, and why it's important for us to support it. Then we'll talk about ways to eat to optimize gut health. That will include some information about probiotics and prebiotics. And we'll talk through some general tips on how we can improve digestion. So a vast amount of research continues to support the profound role that the gut microbiome plays in human health beyond digestion and absorption, from autoimmunity and cardiometabolic issues to brain health and metabolism. So understanding the impact of this internal ecosystem on overall wellness is critical for preventing and addressing chronic health concerns. Additionally, recent evidence is emerging around the association between optimal microbial balance and the potential improved ability to fight and recover from infections like the recent coronavirus. So a key component of achieving and maintaining a resilient gut microbial population is understanding how to implement realistic and effective dietary and lifestyle changes. So hopefully tonight you'll get some ideas of how to do that. So this is a view of our digestive system or gastrointestinal system. I may be calling it GI a lot throughout this presentation. It starts at the mouth and then comes all the way down at the anus. Digestive takes place all along this hollow tube here. This tube is 25 to 30 feet long, all folded up there inside our bodies. Digestive process takes anywhere from 12 to 72 hours, and about 95 to 98% of food is digested and absorbed in the small intestine. So that's a very important part of the digestive system, but really all of the different parts along the way do a lot to this for this process. So digestion is the process that actually makes the food we eat, whatever we eat, available for to our cells and enables us to have the energy for everyday life. Through digestion, we break down food into smaller molecules of carbs, proteins, fats, and then those materials are transferred into our cells in various ways and transported through the bloodstream to different parts of the body. It's important to know that our gut microbes and those bacteria living in our system, throughout the whole system, always play a role in this process of digestion. And what we eat provides them with the fuel that they need. And if we support them properly, then they can do so much to give back to us. GI system or digestive system has a number of functions. So not only it is digestion is part of function there, but we know that the digestive tract, this long hollow tube, also has a big role to play in our immune system and also with neurological functions. So digestive tract provides a barrier against pathogens. Those are the bad bacteria or like those that cause harm. And we want that barrier to be really selective so that we're not letting in those bugs in, that they wouldn't do so much good in our system. It is also responsible for a large part of our natural detoxification process. So I know, and this is another popular term these days, detoxification, especially in January, New Year's resolution and all of that, but just how important this tract is in helping us with the natural pathways to eliminate waste. So as you see, lots of functions that go beyond food and fuel. So first, we could even think of digestion really starting in the brain before even food gets to the mouth. So when we see food, we smell food. The other day, my sister-in-law was actually telling me that her little guy, 4 months old, when they start setting up the table and the food comes and the smell and the sight of food, he starts salivating. And I think that's just so fascinating, a great example of when you're fully present and your senses work there and you're not like too caught up in your mind, then how those juices and enzymes start secreting, you start secreting saliva. And even when we imagine food, the digestive processes start. And we can also think of mindset. So if we can be in more of a relaxed state of mind and more of this rest and digest mindset, then that will also help to facilitate optimal digestion. So the next 2 or 3 slides will be very brief because we won't have enough time to cover all the details of that. You see the stomach, food comes down, gets mixed, broken down, and then we'll see comes down all the way down to the small intestine, a lot of absorption there. And then then we get to the large intestine, or the colon, another name for it. And that's 5 to 6 feet long. Here we have fecal matter stored between 16 and 72 hours, depending on what we have eaten and how our digestion works. Colon or large intestine absorbs water, electrolytes, and those would be like sodium, potassium, and it produces about 1 pound of stool per day. So here we have the gut microbiome. So let's remember that this is not the only place that we have microbes, but this is where we see a lot of them. So let's talk about these microbes a little bit. We humans, we think of ourselves as these autonomous creatures that are the masters of our domain. But in fact, we are covered from the top of our head to the tip of our toes with these invisible beings, these bugs. In a way, we can consider ourselves as super organisms. This human body is carrying life within us. Microbes live inside and on our bodies. They basically cover every nook and cranny of our skin on the outside, while on the inside, they coat our entire gastrointestinal tract, and of course other organs in the body as well. So just a little bit about the numbers, because to me it's just so fascinating, and it's so hard to understand and actually fathom that 39 trillion microorganisms throughout the entire body, and about 38 trillion of them are actually in our gut. I think this number is really hard for us to fathom. An adult can have 10 times more microbial cells than human ones. So the human body has, let's say, 10 billion cells would be our cells, and 100 billion microbial cells. So it's just crazy how many of those we have inside us. So for many, many years of evolution, humans have developed a complex and intimate relationship with these microbes. Going back all the way to the beginning, there never was a sterile human. We, in a way, co-evolved together. Here, we're when we talk about these microbes, we're talking about mostly bacteria in our gut, but we also have yeast or fungi, we have archaea, we have viruses. Viruses are not considered live, but they're actually part of the harmony and balance, and they help us to keep things in balance within the microbiome. The microbiome can weigh as much as our brain and produces a wide variety of chemical substances that our body cannot produce by itself. So you see those terms, microbiome and microbiota there. Let's define some of these sciencey terms. The genetic matter of the microbes inhabiting our body is called the microbiome. So microbiome is an expression that we use to refer to the collective genetic material that is provided by these microbes that are part of us. And the number of genes that belong to the beneficial bacteria, should say microbes, because they're more than bacteria, harbored by our bodies far exceeds the numbers of genes that, let's say, we inherit from our parents. Humans have about 23,000 genes. The intestinal tract's microbiome alone amounts to 3.3 million genes. So it's just way, way more genes. And then the word microbiota is the term that we use for the actual microbes, the actual bacterial viruses. And if in this presentation I mistakenly use them interchangeably, I apologize in advance. I might have already done that. But yeah, so microbiomes, everything, the genes, microbiota, the actual organisms. So when a child is born, she or he is wide open to recruiting new members to their microbial community. This is the closest the child will ever get to being a sterile. They're not sterile, but this is the closest. There are things that happen during this period of time from birth and usually up to the age of 2 or 3, where a child has an almost formed adult size gut microbiome. And this is a really critical period of time because this is also when the immune system is developing and learning what is good and what is bad. And when we disrupt the gut microbiome, we also potentially disrupt our immune system. And we see this when the baby passes through the birth canal, when mom basically donating her gut microbiome to the newborn. So beautiful. It's so fascinating to think about the change that happens at this time. See, mom's vagina has a microbiome, and it's different than the gut microbiome, that mom's gut microbiome. But at 36 weeks of pregnancy, the vaginal microbiome starts to change to more resemble mom's gut microbiome. So that when the child passes through the birth canal, receives all those beneficial microbes, all that goodness. So, and then another fascinating thing is that the human breast milk contains these carbs called human milk oligosaccharides. These are special carbs which have zero nutritional value to the child, but they're food for the child's gut microbiome. They are, we call them prebiotics, food for the good guys. And they help the right bacteria to grow. And this also has a part in the development of the child's immune system. And please, if you are a mom who had a C-section, who didn't get a chance or chose not to breastfeed your child, I don't want you to be concerned. There's always time. There are ways that we can improve the child's gut microbiome, and we'll talk a lot about some of them tonight. And your microbiome profile, scientists say, is as unique as your fingerprint. Maybe you can call it poo print. And this is in contrast to having something like, I want us to understand this, like, when it's different than having a perfect microbiome. There's no such a thing. I think more and more research is showing that it's not so much that there is one perfect microbiome out there that would be suited for everyone, but that each person's microbiome is a bit different. And so that's what makes it a little bit difficult to know how to optimize each person's microbiome, because the same microbes might have a different impact in another person, just depending on the interactions of the other species. There are strains of microbes that are in the other person's system. So each human is a complex ecosystem whose microbes play ecological roles, lots of roles. Microbial genes turn on and off in response to what we do, and then our genes turn on and off in response to what our microbes do. There's this symbiotic relationship that happens between us and our gut microbes. Symbiotic relationship means a close relationship, close interaction between living organisms, and it's mutually beneficial for both of them. So we provide food and shelter for these microbes, and then they provide us with a wealth of benefits, such as improving the health of our gut and strengthening our immune system. Microbial genes have the potential to regulate our immune system. And it's interesting to know that 70 to 80% of our immune system is housed in the gut. These microbial genes are involved in keeping populations of immune cells in check during health and control immune defense against pathogens. They can influence, they also can influence our mental health with regulating the neuroactive chemicals that are produced in our bodies, which then enter the bloodstream and travel to the brain, and they help quite a bit with modulation of serotonin or happy hormones, which also plays a role in regulating the, gut motility. Another function of gut microbiome is digestion. We kind of talked about that, so that microbes that we have can really enhance or detract from our digestion. Fiber is one way that the gut microbiome is strengthened, and so they're basically feeding off of fiber. The gut microbiome are then able to produce these short chain fatty acids when we give them fiber, which are really helpful for reducing inflammation in the body, as well as having a number of other benefits, including fuel for our intestinal cells. Gut microbes also help with synthesizing vitamins. So different vitamins, such as some of the B's and vitamin K2. So lots of very important roles there. This is slide, it's a very important slide, and it's one of my favorite topics, but just for the sake of time, I'm not sure if we will have enough time to cover this. I'm going to skip through this slide, and if we have time at the end of the presentation, I'll promise to come back to this. So here we know, and we see more and more research coming out telling us that our microbiome does change. And what do I mean by change? I'm talking about the kinds of microbes that are present there, the numbers of each type of microbe, relative amount of each microbe, kinds of active microbial genes, all of that does change and can change. So to give you a bit more details on that, there are a number of factors that influence our microbiome. Sorry, I'm going to have a sip of water. So what are these factors? As we mature and age, let's say with puberty or pregnancy, as our diet changes, medical conditions, certain treatments, if you have pets in the home, things like exercise, lifestyle, stress, where you live, medications, drugs, and of course, diet. So, and it seems like diet and drugs or medications, things like antibiotics particularly, are the largest influencers of our gut microbiome. Research indicates that diet is essential for human gut microbiome composition, which in turn is crucial for metabolizing nutrients into active forms for the host, that would be us. So today we think that a plant-based diet may be an effective way to promote a diverse ecosystem of beneficial microbes that will support overall health. So a little bit more on this, and you have that big term there, biodiversity. So biodiversity is a very important word here these days, another popular word, because the biodiversity within our gut microbiome is a measure of health. The more species that we have, the more our gut microbiome is resistant to sort of disturbances. So you seeing the slide eubiosis and dysbiosis. So eubiosis is a healthy and balanced state that is marked by high diversity, high abundance of microbial population in the GI tract. So when we talk about eubiosis, we're referring to balance and harmony within the microbiome. This is a broad diverse microbiome, all of the different species, and there are good guys in there and some bad guys. I don't necessarily like using those terms for microbes, but just for the sake of better understanding. So there are some good guys, there are some bad guys, but the good guys outweigh the bad guys. So in eubiosis, so much that the bad guys can't harm us. When we deviate from this place of harmony and balance, we move into losing some of the species that are there. And the bad guys become more prominent to the point that they could potentially cause harm. When this happens, we call this dysbiosis. So, dysbiosis basically refers to this abnormality in the gut microbiota. And this may be too many or too few species. And really, we often think of this as being associated with reduced diversity. So rather than having, let's say, too many of them, we think of having just less diversity being potentially detrimental. And then having the wrong balance of a species can also be something that's problematic, or having the species in the wrong place in the intestine. So all of that can play a role. And again, this is very individual. So it's not like you should definitely have these certain species in the place in your intestinal tract or in your colon, because it's something that just really depends on each person. But we do know that dysbiosis itself is more than just a change to the microbes. It starts to affect the layer of our gut and gut permeability. You may have heard the term leaky gut, which leads to other health complications. It can contribute to a chronic low-grade inflammation, which we are trying to work against through a lot of dietary methods. Dysbiosis is one of those funny things where it's hard for us to really know right now whether it's a cause of diseases or whether it's a consequence of disease. So does dysbiosis come first before different diseases, or does it work the other way around? We're still trying to figure it out. But so dysbiosis, what I'm trying to say, is a pathogenic, is not a healthy state of digestive tract, and it's marked by a diminished microbiome or microbiota. Some of the I apologize if the picture is not that clear, but some of the contributing factors here to gut dysbiosis include a lack of dietary fiber, big top on that list, excessive antibiotic use, especially if it was over a long period of time and very frequently used, diets that are high in highly processed food, environmental toxins, lack of regular sleep, and even psychosocial stress. And actually, there is a wealth of evidence showing the harmful effects of psychosocial stress on gut microbiota. This goes both ways. And what do I mean by that? Psychosocial stress can affect one's gut microbiome or microbiome in general, and one's microbiome can affect the way we respond to stress. So let's see where we are standing with all this. When we look at the average American, or I take the liberty of saying even Canadian diet, we get this stat of 10% plants, 30% animal products, 60% highly processed food. So that's on average. Maybe you have a healthier diet, but like as a nation, as a group of people, this is our average. So let's pause for a second there. 60% highly processed foods. We make these highly processed foods that can sit on the store shelf in a box for a year or more, and they don't change. So how can that happen? We make them basically lifeless. They have no microbiome. They are filled with chemicals to increase shelf life. FDA has approved, I think, about 10,000 additives that are in our food supply right now. So when we think about that, concerns can rise when we allow, in a very short period of time, and by short period of time, I mean when we compare it with the history of like humans being on this planet, in that short period of time, 10,000 new chemicals into our food supply. That these chemicals were not part of our ancestors, great-grandparents' life. So what happens when you eat that food with food additives and those chemicals that are designed to kill microbes for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, like however amounts that you can live. So why do I think this is important? We know that chronic diseases, different types, affect many Canadians and Americans. We know the bowel cancer is one of the most common cancers here. We've got one of the highest rates of colorectal cancer. We've got lots of women in particular suffering from constipation, and we can link gut health to all of these chronic diseases like many forms of cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and so on. Just seems that, at least in my practice, that there's sort of this increase in the number of people, particularly women, complaining about gut problems such as bloating, pain, discomfort, and so on. And maybe it's just not that the ratio is higher in women. Maybe we complain more or we seek out help more, but it is there. And we do seem to have this rise in gut problems along with the trend of low fiber intake. So here's the problem. I'm using American stats, but Canadians are not that far from it. Maybe slightly better, hopefully. So stat tells us that 97% of Americans are not getting an adequate amount of fiber in their diet. And that's creating issues for us. In other words, 97% of people are fiber deficient. And the expectations for the standard that we are holding is 25 grams for women, 30 grams for men. And the average Canadian is taking half of that. The Americans take somewhere between 15 to 18 grams a day. So quite low. But there is hope. There is good news. Another sciencey term for you, rebiosis. Rebiosis is the process of restoring and maintaining the gut microbiome. So this is the really great thing about the microbiome, is that it can be supported to then thrive and flourish again, just like a garden plot that's maybe been neglected for a little while. With some attention and care and love and kindness, we can see that shift in a positive direction. So really, in terms of timeline, this is a question that I'm asked quite often. What's been shown through research is that we can see positive or negative shifts within just a few days. It can be very encouraging or it can be very scary for some of us. So shifts within just a few days of making dietary changes that can impact the microbiome. So if you were to have like a dramatic increase in your fruit and vegetable intake, just give you an example, then you could see a pretty big restoration of the diversity of the species in your GI tract within a few days, and then could see the impact of that over time. So how do we do this? How do we do rebiosis? In simple terms, this would mean increasing fiber intake and fiber diversity. So here I have this beautiful picture of a tribe in Tanzania for you. Some of you might have heard about this tribe. The Hadza is a tribe that lives in Tanzania. They are modern hunters and gatherers. They eat whatever is available. They eat some meat, but they eat mostly plants, and they consume, this is a very interesting number. I want you to pay attention to it and compare it to what was with the average American intake. So they consume 100 grams of fiber per day. And so the average we had there for Americans were 15 to 18, and then they are eating 100 grams of fiber per day. And the critical piece for them is they consume 100 varieties of plants in a given year. 600. There are 300,000 edible plants on the planet. Maybe we are still discovering more. The problem is that we have narrowed it down to the point where 70, 80, sometimes 90, depending on your diet, is from a few of them. And we are ignoring this diversity. When we look at the microbiome of this tribe, we see the high diversity of species there. When they studied the Hatzas and they compared their biodiversity within their gut microbiome, the scientists saw that they have 30 to 40% more diversity compared to a person on a typical Western diet. So an interesting, very interesting group to study, actually. As I mentioned, biodiversity in the previous slides is a really important word these days. And biodiversity within your gut microbiome, again, remember, is a measure of health. Moving on with this, so because we talk about fiber a lot, so what is fiber? Many different definitions around the world, and even among different organizations, they use different definitions. But the term dietary fiber was first used in 1940s, and they defined it simply as carbohydrate that resisted digestion and improved laxation. So that was one of the main things, laxation. And then later on, they proposed that dietary fiber would be measured as non-starch polysaccharides. So term NSP, some of you might have seen that on some of the labels. So that was just basically for the purpose of food labeling. So what is important to know is fiber is not a single entity, not even a group of related compounds. It's actually a very large mixed group of compounds. When we talk about fiber, we also need to consider that the same benefits, effects may not be seen when a particular type of fiber is extracted and added as a food ingredient, for example, compared to when we consume within the whole food matrix, basically, because the synergistic activities of whole food fibers may mediate some protective effects that we don't see those, let's say, in a supplement form. It's not that it's none, but it's a different mechanism. So the connection between fiber and our gut microbiome is incredible. Some fiber feeds the microbiome, not all of them. This is their preferred food. And when we give this to them, they multiply, they grow stronger, and then they reward us for that by releasing short-chain fatty acids, which have healing effects throughout the entire body. So let's get down into the different types of fiber, because this is really key take-home message, that no longer is the total grams. I know we're always interested in numbers. I'll give you some numbers at the end of this presentation, but no longer is the total grams is all that we need to look at. We actually need to look at where we are getting our fiber from. So the same way that we can broadly say categorize fats, like some we call like bad fats, good fats, not those terms, but let's say LDL, HDL, and different categories of fats. The same way we can broadly categorize fiber types into soluble fiber, insoluble fiber, and resistant starch. And again, this is one of the main ones. There are other classifications. So this is basically the edible part of the plants, and we usually want them to have certain qualities like resist digestion and absorption in the small intestine, that they can make it all the way to the colon or large intestine, and usually completely or partially being fermented there. And then they can promote laxation or reduce blood cholesterol or help with blood sugar regulation. So getting deeper into this, starting with soluble fibers. So these are the ones that are particularly good at forming a gel in the small intestine and slowly down the tract of the digestive, slowly down the attack of the digestive enzymes. They allow better blood glucose control. So you'll find that many foods that are high in soluble fiber tend to have a low glycemic index for that reason, because of that forming gel, slowing down the whole process of digestion. So it's released in a slower pace. These particular types of fibers are also good in cholesterol reabsorption, and most of them are fermentable by the colonic bacteria or by the bacteria that live in the large intestine, although not all of them. And so these are really good, called them prebiotics, food for our microbiota. Well, I'll give you more details on that term. So legumes are a classic source. So things like chickpeas, lentils, beans. We've got oats and barley amongst the grains. Then you've got fruit and vegetables. Particularly the flesh is where you'll find the soluble fiber. This is like, I'm overgeneralizing it, but just to give you an idea. But you'll find insoluble fiber in the peel of vegetables and fruit. And then insoluble fiber, which is commonly referred to as roughage. We are trying to not use that term as much, but that's what most people know the insoluble fiber with. And so this is a bulking agent, very good for improving regularity of bowel function. Most of these are partially fermentable in the colon, large intestine. So there's a small percentage of insoluble fiber can be made use of by gut microbes. So a lot of insoluble fiber will simply be carried out of the body, but it still has lots of benefits. Just going to have another sip of water. The other thing about insoluble fiber is that it also seems to help in carrying all of the different types of fiber right through the lengths of the bowel. And that's something that we want. That's something that helps with moving waste forward. And then the last one here is resistant starch, my new favorite one. Some examples here are millet, legumes, firm or unripe bananas, cooked and cool pasta. Very important group, and we're going to spend a bit more time on this because of its very, very important role in supporting our gut microbiome. So it is called resistant starch because it resists our digestion. It escapes digestion in the small intestine so that it can make it all the way down to the large intestine. Basically enters the colon, large intestine, unaltered. And there it is being fermented by these bacteria or microbes at that point. And the result, the product is short-chain fatty acids, which we talked a little bit about how important those are. Resistant starch can be found, as we said, some like plantain, green bananas, whole grains, and potatoes. And an important piece here is I find this personally really fascinating and something that I didn't learn about when I was a student, when I was doing my dietetics. So resistant starch is produced depending on the way that we prepare and cook our food. So if you cook and cool your potatoes or your pasta or your rice or pretty much any other grain and allow it to cool, and then you have it in a salad, or to some extent when you reheat it as well, you're going to get more of that resistant starch. So I want to emphasize on this. Resistance to starch levels vary according to cooking and cooling methods and degree of ripeness. So, for example, if potatoes are cooked and then cooled, they're rich in resistant starch, as because the cooled starch in potatoes become retrograded starch and becomes resistant to digestion in the small intestine. So will find its way all the way down to the colon, and now the bacteria have access to work on it and ferment it. So it is fascinating because when we look at data in Asian countries, they actually have more resistant to starch than we realize, despite the fact that they may be eating quite a bit of rice, way more than we do, because of the way that they tend to cook. They cook a big pot of rice in the morning, and then it will be reheated later, or some culture they just eat it cold in the day. In fact, they are getting more resistant starch than people in the West who may just cook up their white rice ready for the particular meal. So these are just the main classifications, as I mentioned, similar to what we do with fats, breaking them down to help us study them better. But each of these main groups can be broken down to even smaller groups. What I would like for us to get out of tonight's presentation is to realize that there are millions of types of fibers in nature. Maybe not millions, but like it feels like every day, like we're hearing about something new. But it's so incredibly complicated from a chemistry perspective. Every single plant has its own unique type of fiber that feeds the microbiome. Fiber is their preferred food, as we said, and the key is that they have different food preferences, like us. So to put it in perspective, take a grain like barley. You give these microbes barley, and there are specific species that are going to multiply and thrive, and they're going to be stronger. Amazing. But the opposite can be true when, let's say, you take that barley away, you say, I'm going barley-free diet. And those same microbes that were thriving because you were feeding them barley are now starving. There's no barley. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to disregard food allergies and GI issues that a lot of people are struggling with, and you need to stay away from certain grains or certain types of fiber. But in general, if you don't have any limitations and you just take that away from you, know that you are affecting and changing your gut microbiome. So what we need to focus on is those three main types of fiber. They work together. And to be honest, no one group is more important than the other. Is that team approach between all of these different fiber types, and even within each of those groups, is something that we want to benefit from. So a little bit on probiotics. We don't go into too much details of these guys, but these would be foods which contain live bacteria, and that is beneficial to the host. These would be like fermented foods, food that contain live bacteria themselves. And these are beneficial types of living organisms that are useful for helping to colonize the GI tract with the helpful microbes. Not every living organism is considered probiotic. So just because it's a living bacterium, for example, it doesn't make it a probiotic. So a probiotic has to have call it a proven benefit to be shown to survive that into the colon, and then exert some influence there, some benefits there. They are considered travelers in the GI tract, so they're transient. They come in and then they go out unless we provide something to help them stick around longer. And we give them fiber, they stay longer. So don't get too scared about, but just by looking at this slide. I'll just take out the parts that would be relevant to our talk tonight. And just want to say that with probiotics, say not every living microbes is a probiotic. The same is true with prebiotics. So that's really important, that not every fiber is prebiotic. They may have other health benefits, but not all of them are considered prebiotic. So a prebiotic, how do we define it? It's a selectively fermented ingredient that allows specific changes. And that can be in the composition, that can be in the gas activity of these microbes that would end up benefiting us. So prebiotics are foods that selectively stimulate certain bacteria population in the gut or microbial population in the gut. These are the foods for those probiotics that we were talking about. And primarily, this is going to be fiber, certain types of fiber that we can't necessarily digest, but that provides food for those probiotics, for those live organisms. So speaking of fermentation, I kept repeating that over and over, like fermentable fiber. We want this fiber to get fermented in the colon to give us those short-chain fatty acids and all the amazing health benefits of that. That brings us to the important topic of FODMAPs. So FODMAPs are an interesting area because more and more people are having to deal with them. So more and more people are becoming interested in them. So these are, just look at that abbreviation there. So fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides. So this basically refers to the total number of sugar in that molecule. So this is what a probiotic essentially is. You've got resistant starch, things like we call them FOS or GOS, that are fermented by the resident bacteria and other microbes that are present and largely in the colon. Smaller amounts are in the small intestine, but most of them are there in the colon. So these are carbs, carbohydrates that are found in similar foods. And all of these carbs that I'm listing here, like the FOS, so that would be onions and garlic, asparagus, artichoke, list goes on. And this isn't an exhaustive list, of course, but these are a number of those foods that are thought to be higher in some of these components. And then GOS, or galacto-oligosaccharides, are another one of these non-digestible carbs. And we can find these in legumes like lentils, peas, beans, all those amazing things. So for some people, of course, these are really key problems. And we've got very good research actually showing that roughly 7 out of 10, possibly even more in some studies, IBS patients, and that stands for irritable bowel syndrome, will benefit from going on a low FODMAP diet. And it's not IBS. We see some other conditions like endometriosis and a few other GI issues that people going on a low FODMAP diet is very helpful. But the downside is that going on a low FODMAP diet has a potentially unfavorable effect on our microbiome. So what is concerning is that lots of people are putting themselves on low FODMAP diets, maybe they not necessarily needing it, without the help of a specialist dietitian. And that's where we are going to get into encountering problems. It is not intended as a diet for life. So for those of you who are not familiar with the diet, I have a few pages on the website. Feel free to go on www.gutlovingdietitian.com and read about IBS and FODMAPs. But I really recommend that you do get in touch with a specialist dietitian and not do it on your own. Because these are what the examples that I gave you here in these FODMAPs are not digestible to us, but they are fuel for the microbiota. So really helpful for them. And what's very important about that fermentation is that, again, they produce short-chain fatty acids that are helpful in tissue repair, reducing the proliferation of tumor cells, and that's huge. And for cancer, and that is something that we really want to encourage. They also help with immune system, with inflammatory modulation, so increasing or decreasing the immune system functions in different ways. So what happens if you go on a low fermentable fiber diet? Maybe in short, we won't experience really negative effects, but if you are on it for a longer period of time, well, importantly, you get this decline in overall bacterial diversity. And we talked about how important it is for that ecosystem to be as diverse as possible. One of the most worrying things when we look at in the Western modern diet is that when this goes on for too long, we get this irreversible loss of some of the bacterial strains, and then we can't get them back. When we look at the difference between people in modern developed countries eating Western lifestyle diet compared to people living in a much more traditional diet, they have a far broader range of microbes. And some of those strains have literally become extinct in the Western world. And the key problem is that this is getting worse over the generations. So we have to think of the future generation. And this is just might be explaining why we are seeing more and more gut problems, because people are lacking particular bacterial strains. They are lacking that diversity of microbes in order to be able to digest a broad plant-rich diet. And we also see a decrease in epithelial integrity. Those are the cell linings of our intestine, and increased permeability. And that, again, the term leaky gut may be more familiar to, and this leads to increased susceptibility to infection. So very, very important. So some of you might have heard about this. The American Gut Project is one of the largest studies today to take our diets and lifestyle and connect it to that term that we talked about, biodiversity and our gut microbiome. It is not just American, it is actually an international study. They have people from over 40 different countries from around the world. These scientists showed the number one predictor of a healthy gut microbiome, and as a result, gut health, is the diversity of plants in our diet. So the results of this study showed the best health was seen when people had, they came with this number, 30 different types of fiber in a week. So is that a magic number? Is there a magic difference between, let's say, 30 and 28, or can you do 40 instead of 30? Remember Hatzas, they do 100. The point is we want as much diversity as possible, and that's the piece that I want tonight to stay with you. People come to me and say, all right, tell me what food is the best, and I'll eat that. And I know, like, these days, like, the idea of superfoods are very popular, or, just give me the list of 5 things that I need and I'll focus on that. What I'm trying to encourage us all is to broaden our options here and try to explore and expand. So let's see how we can do that. Just a few tips for tonight. So taking a look at a time. So as we talked about it, the good news is you can improve your gut health. Well, that's huge. You can change your gut microbiome. So you can transform it with diet and lifestyle. And so I think that is, for me, that is exciting. So, but where do we start? To summarize what's good for gut health, well, we know that it's a diet with a variety of different fibers. So just think varied diet means varied microbiome. And one thing that all researchers around the world seem to agree on is diversity of the microbiota. That is what really gives us the best gut health. And I go even beyond that overall health, because gut health is literally connected to the health of every organ. We need to have that balance of different bugs there. And plant diversity is the key for that. If you are wanting to maximize your gut and overall health, I hope this gut loving guide will help you. So to begin with, fill up on fiber. Why keep coming back to this? Why? Because fiber is your gut microbes' favorite food. And remember, 97% of people are deficient. You may not be one of them, but I think wherever we are, we can always improve. Keeping your gut microbiome well fed will benefit almost every organ in your body, including your brain, heart, mind, skin. And in the past year, especially in the past few weeks, more studies are coming out about the importance of gut microbiome and your lungs. And that becomes really important, especially because of the situation with coronavirus. So they're showing the survivorship of those who last and have a better recovery, or not even just like at the prevention level, how gut microbiome is connected to our lungs, because we also have lung microbiome. You know, they're everywhere, and every organ has their specific types. So how do we do that? How the recommendation is to aim for 8 or more servings of fiber per day. I will give you some numbers for those of you who are interested, just grams and servings, but remember diversity. When it comes to a gut-loving diet, diversity is the key. So how diverse is diverse? I recommend aiming for what we learned from the American Gut Project, for 30 different plant-based foods on your plate per week. Every week, think about that. So with each meal, think about what you can add in. Like, we are so focused on what to eliminate, take out. Let's bring those back. Let's think of the good things, the goodness that we can add into our plates. Think of creative ways. So think like, can you sprinkle mixed seeds and maybe nut butter, peanut butter, almond butter onto your morning porridge with your apple and cinnamon, or pear, or any other fruit that you like there. I love mulberries, so I'll add mulberries to mine. Experiment with new whole grains. Like this week, think about what grain have I not used, and I can go ahead and try something new, like maybe orzo. Sometimes people are not familiar with that. Like think of something new every week if you can. It requires some planning and being intentional, but it is possible. Or grab all the colors of peppers when you go grocery shopping. Instead of just the red one or the yellow one, grab the mix bags, grab the mixed greens instead of only, let's say, lettuce. Go for the mixed stir fry pack instead of the one that only has one vegetable. Maybe you can add some mixed beans to your pasta sauce next time you're making it. And make plans, especially the ones we're emphasizing on tonight, your friends. Sorry, needed more water just to help my gut. And enjoy a variety of fruit. So in terms of fruit, anything, they're all amazing, but berries, citrus, and apples have been shown to have really beneficial effects for the gut microbiome. It doesn't mean that the rest of the fruit are not as good. It's just these are the ones that we have studies for them to prove that they're amazing. enjoy a variety of whole grains. Again, as I mentioned, just think of trying something new. Enjoy a variety of beans. Nuts and seeds, especially we call them omega-3 seeds. We didn't talk about omega-3s, but it's a kind of fat, like flax seeds, chia seeds, hemp hearts. Put all three of them in your smoothie if you eat a smoothie. And not that I'm promoting smoothie, but you can even add it to the morning cereal or porridge. And variety of vegetables, especially the one, like if you're not intolerant, if you don't have IBS or some GI issues, the FODMAPs like garlic and onions, and then tubers and roots like beets, sweet potatoes, artichoke, carrots, jicama, and then starches like plantains and bananas, and so the unripe ones have more resistant starch. Then I have put, sorry, there should be a comma between seaweed and cruciferous. Those are two different groups. I apologize for that mistake. So then seaweed, technically they're not plants, but they do benefit the microbiome. And a great resource that most of us are not very familiar with, but they definitely add diversity to our diet. And they have their unique types of fiber and nutrients. And then cruciferous vegetables, they are famous for their phytochemical, the plant chemical called sulforaphane. And sulforaphane. So you will find them in cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, all the amazing vegetables that come with that package. And the best part about it is they are a very powerful cancer protective plant. Even I also encourage people to go with the what is it called, the sprouts. So for example, broccoli sprouts. We have amazing research showing about the cancer protective effects of that. So, and I have this here. The image is not mine, but this is a recipe from the website. This is a Persian noodle soup. And the last time I counted the numbers of plant points that you can get in one bowl, you can get 15 different types of plants. So if you are in the mood to try a new recipe, check out the website and make that soup, and let me know how you like it. A very rich source of pre and probiotic because of one of the ingredients is fermented. So moving on, just also again checking the time. So this is just to give a visual. Again, I don't want anyone to stress out about numbers, to get stuck about the numbers. But when we talked about 8 or more servings of fruits and vegetables, or average American is having 15 grams of fiber. So what does that mean? So an apple with the skin, one medium apple, has less than 4 grams. When without skin, of course, less. Just some examples from the fruit group. When we move on to vegetables, like there we have vegetables and legumes. I should have legumes like slash there, but lentils are, beans in general, legumes in general, and then lentils are like the highest on that list. Lots of fiber, and the serving size is not as big. So including those into your diet. And then with grains, you can compare the whole wheat bread with white bread and have a look at that, the difference between the fiber intake there. So again, just to get an idea, that the main focus is the diversity, trying something new. And so again, with that, just remember the Hatzas are getting 100 grams a day. So let's see what you can come up with. And here I have some examples for probiotics, just to make it a bit real for you, because we talked about the definition of the probiotics. So what are they? Where can you find them? So sauerkraut and kimchi, these are spicy condiments. kefir or kefir, yogurts, buttermilk, these are dairy-based probiotics, so not recommended for if there is a dairy intolerance or allergies, but most people can tolerate these. An important thing here is yogurt and kefir are thought to have different spectrum of probiotics. So if you're open to that, I actually encourage you to have some of both. Have some yogurt and have some kefir. If you haven't tried kefir yet, try it, see how you like it. And then you can get those complementary spectrum of probiotics. Then I have miso here for you, a condiment that's made out of soybeans. You might be familiar with miso soup, but miso can also be used in sauces and as a salad dressing. There are actually lots of really delicious salad dressings that use miso, so that's one way of using it. And then some lifestyle or beyond dietary improvements. Again, just because of time, we won't have enough time to go into the details of each, but we've got to remember to drink plenty of water. If you increase your fiber intake, fiber absorbs water within the gut. So you need to make sure that you're having plenty of water at the same time. And then a key thing to do with gut health is physical activity. So remember that as soon as you move, that tends to stimulate your gut contractions. Being in an active body helps your gut become active too. So there is no doubt that possibly gut problems that a lot of us are experiencing and feeling of bloated discomfort from food is actually from sitting at a desk all day. There are days that I am definitely guilty of that. So we've got to make sure that we put the diet within the context of a healthy lifestyle. And then stress does impact the gut. So those people who are in a chronic stress situation, then it's no wonder that they often end up with gut problems. So when we are looking at managing our gut problems, we've got to look at it more holistically. The other thing that I think we have to do is that we need to normalize what gut function is, because most people, I hope it is changing slowly. I'm not imagining this, but most people don't want to talk about pooing and farting and burping and what's normal, but that's so important. A colleague of mine was telling this from her interaction with one of the top gastroenterologists in the country, who was saying to her that she feels, and based on what she sees in her practice, that one of the major GI problem, digestive problems that we have is the result of people holding their farts, which I thought it was brilliant. So we really need to talk about what is normal in terms of our bowel function, in terms of our stool, whether it's the consistency or the frequency, and about the gas production. And a helpful way for those of you who are experiencing any GI discomfort would be tracking your food and using a food journal, whichever template is easier for you, and keep track of your symptoms. Again, just taking time. Okay, so we'll have some time for the questions. So thank you very, very much for listening. That was an overview of fiber and gut microbiome. But really, those are the key take-home messages that I want you to remember to get those different types of fiber into your diet and consider it within the context of a healthy lifestyle. I hope you found some practical tips there. Always welcome to reach out on the website www.gutlovingdietitian.com. And I really hope 2021 be the year of enjoying good gut health. Thank you so much. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let Dion comes back to us.
Hi, thank you so much, Zahra. That was amazing. Such a wealth of knowledge to share.
Thank you.
So the chat, we have had one question come in, and we'll wait for a couple, see if any more come in. So this question says, we know that antibiotics disturb microbiome, but do we know if vaccines disturb microbiome and therefore gut health and therefore our immune system?
So, first of all, thank you for that question. I think that's a really really good question. I find the subject of vaccines, first of all, very controversial, and I tend to be careful when I speak about vaccines because it's important to know which ones we're talking about, at what age they have been administered to, whether it's a child, adult. So, there are a lot of other factors involved when we talk about vaccination and the immune system. So the quick general answer is yes, it does affect our microbiome. But when it comes to terms of whether it is negative or positive or just outweighing the benefits that a vaccine brings compared to the changes in the gut microbiome, or the other way around, is it worth it or not? If that's something of this person's interest, definitely, like, we can talk about it. I think, again, I'm being careful about how to answer that question because I think it's very individual, and in order for me to be able to answer that question better and in more details would be to get to know the person, their background, their history of gut health and other immune complications, and if they have had any reactions in the past, let's say, to vaccines. But yeah, so very individual, and quick answer would be yes, it does affect the gut microbiome.
Thank you. So we kind of just have another comment that basically is just positive feedback saying thank you so much. So
Oh, my
definitely
joy.
getting some good feedback here. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, is there anything else you want to comment while we wait and see if any more questions come in, or?
Yeah, so again, everyone's welcome to check out the recipe that I shared with you on the website. If I understand that maybe some people reached out to me that they didn't have a Google account, so they may not be able to submit their questions right now. So if you're always welcome to submit your questions directly on the website. You don't need to email me, just on the website, put where it says messages, just message me. And I don't promise to get back to you right away, but I'll do my best to do it as soon as I can.
Okay, we're getting a lot more conversation going in the chat now. So
Oh, amazing.
next question is, are vitamins or collagen having influence on the microbiome?
So, I'm thinking of, like, regarding vitamins. Yes, there is some research there. With collagen, I can think of some studies that look at the correlations, but can't think of anything with significant changes because collagen. Again, I'm not against anyone who wants to take collagen or food sources of collagen. But collagen is basically a group of amino acids. So if someone is deficient in those amino acids, taking it is very beneficial. They will replace it. In general, if someone is following a healthful diet with sufficient amount of proteins, they should be able to get those amino acids from foods. And again, back to some comments that, again, we have to assess the person. If there may be time for you to get collagen, and that would help. Again, if we need those proteins, those amino acids, for the health of the intestinal cells. So if we are deficient in those amino acids and the intestinal cells are not functioning well, I guess it's because this interaction is from our cells to theirs, the bacterial cells, is back and forth. That would affect the total composition. But how and to what amount would be very individual.
Thank you. So just some more positive feedback and thanking for the presentation. Um, Here's a question. I always talk about my second brain as being my stomach. Can you discuss more about the brain-gut connection?
Yeah, so that was the slide that we kind of skipped because I wasn't sure if we would have time for that. So do you,
Someone else
do you want
asked
me
if you
to
would be willing, sorry to interrupt you.
go back there? Yeah, of
There,
course.
there was someone that asked if you would be willing to go back to that side if you had time.
Yeah, of course. So we have about 10 minutes. Maybe we can spend the next 10 minutes on that one. Is that, how does that sound to you, Dion?
Yeah, why don't I just, there was two other
Sure.
questions.
Yeah, let's take those and then I'll bring up that slide for us.
So this one, the question is, does cooking affect things or should they, or eat it raw? Sorry.
No problem. So so let's see if I completely understand the question. So there was a part that we talked about resistant storage and the cooking and cooling methods that affects the amount of resistant storage in that. So the answer is yes, it does affect it. If the question is about certain minerals and vitamins, like I have seen some concerns that if we cook certain foods, we lose certain minerals and vitamins. That can be true for some vitamins that are sensitive to heat. Let's say some of the B's, vitamin C. And it's not that if we cook them, we completely get rid of the nutrients. It's just like the percentage will be lower. At the same time, there are certain vegetables. I can give you the example of spinach that we encourage people to steam or cook them a little bit because the nutrients in them, let's say iron or calcium, becomes more bioavailable. They're kind of stuck in this cage called oxalate. So when we cook them, those nutrients become bioavailable. So depending on the vegetable, but if I would say have both, enjoy some cooked, enjoy some raw, and don't worry too much about losing those. But don't cook them too long and on really high heat because that wouldn't be recommended.
Great, thank you. And so the last question before we move on to the slide is, I'm taking probiotics as a supplement every day, and when would be the best time to take? In the morning before breakfast? Or the question was, should they take it in the morning before breakfast?
So probiotic supplements, that is a big, huge, in some way, controversial topic as well. There is, depending on the brand that you're using, because we want these live organisms to survive passing through our stomach, small intestine, and finds their way to the colon that we open up there, and then those would be available. So it's really hard to say. Some people prefer, again, some labels, and you might have seen it, some labels encourage people to have it on an empty stomach. Some labels encourage you to have it with food. So there is really no consistency there. If you have, there are times, so let's say if you are, this is where we have evidence for it. So this is the part that I can feel a bit more comfortable kind of recommending it, is if a person is on antibiotics and they develop diarrhea from the use of antibiotics. So that part we do recommend supplements of probiotics. And the thing that you need to be aware of is that we would give 12 hours away from the time that you take the antibiotic. So that would be more important than if you are taking it on an empty stomach or if you are taking it with food. That would be a more important and more relevant number. If you have tried probiotic in the past and it worked for you, great.
Thank you. So if you have time to just briefly go over that last slide,
Yeah,
or the
sure.
slide
So,
requested.
of course, let's bring it up. Let's see. So, let's see if we can go back. So, this was the slide, I think, and I'll try to kind of condense it in 5, 6 minutes, see how far we can go. This would be a an hour talk by itself, if not more. So again, some of you might have heard about the enteric nervous system. It's also known as gut-brain axis. The enteric nervous system is part of our digestive tract, and also part of the autonomic nervous system. And again, sorry if those terms are not familiar for you, means that like this nervous system that is separate than our brain. We can't really control it with our brain like that. Critical thinking is not part of it. The reason is part of that is because it has so much autonomy. It's referred to as the second brain, and it works to help control the digestive system. This system is responsible for gut movement and motility, move things around as to how fast or how slow that material is moved along through the digestive tract. It is responsible for a bunch of things like food exchange. So some of that food exchange that we talked about happens in the colon. It's also responsible for gastric secretions, so the juices that comes in our stomach. So some of those enzymes that help to process the food, and it's responsible for local blood flow in that area. So this system is influenced by, call it the rest and digest, and also fight or flight nervous system. So this means that the fight or flight nervous system is kind of our alert system. If something is happening and you really need to get away from it quickly or under a lot of acute stress, then this system can be activated. And this means that resources like blood are then diverted away from the GI system so that they can go out to the arms and legs and basically help you run away from whatever danger you may be experiencing. The gut microbiome and our brain have a direct and two-way high-speed connection via the vagus nerve. So they have a big nerve here. The brain and microbiome are in continual communication to monitor and stabilize body functions. Like many of our we call it parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system. So those would be functions like breathing, heart rate, inflammation, relaxation. They're all triggered by vagus nerve communication, because brain function is dependent on the chemical that are produced in the microbiome. So our gut microbes produce certain chemicals themselves. Our brain health is being proven to be connected to our microbiome health. So by alerting the gut if the brain is alert, that's a different topic. But if we change the gut microbiome, we can have an effect on mental health. You can separate the two, basically. Your brain's best friend is your gut, and it's really fascinating to think about it, because we kind of think of the brain as being the top. It's a critical part of being a human, but if you have an unhealthy gut, it's going to affect your brain. And if you have a healthy gut, your brain that is being, the function of the brain is being optimized. So here's how it works. There's a two-way street in terms of communication. They are talking to each other right now as I'm talking to you. I'm borrowing a great analogy from a colleague who said, your brain and your gut are like two teenage girls on the phone for 6 hours straight, and it's like nonstop. Your brain has the ability to talk to your gut through your vagus nerve, which is the information superhighway between the two, and then through the hormones that are released from the pituitary gland, and even through our those two sympathetic, and parasympathetic nervous system. So our brain has the ability to affect our gut. This is basically what I'm trying to say. And then the gut also produces neurotransmitters. The gut produces over 30 different types of neurotransmitters, and I find this really fascinating, including 90% of our serotonin. So serotonin is a neurotransmitter that helps with mood regulations, and particularly with that sense of contentment. So Serotonin, or some people call it the happy hormone, affects our mood, our focus, our energy levels, and our memory. And there are precursors to serotonin and dopamine and other neurotransmitters produced in the gut that are capable of crossing the blood-brain barrier, another important thing, and they can alter our mood. This is the reason why we have studies that show that you can affect or impact anxiety and depression with diet alone. And then a plant-based diet is beneficial in many cases. And so it's fascinating to consider these connections. But one of the other things that we need to hear about is, I mentioned this several times, the short chain fatty acids like sorry if I'm bombarding you with some of these names: butyrate, acetate, propionate, which all of these short chain fatty acids come from the consumption of fiber. Also, these have the ability to cross the blood-brain barrier and alter brain function. So there's all different ways that we are in constant communication, and they affect each other, and it's dynamically occurring right now. Again, as I'm talking and you're listening, this is happening. Even some signaling from the microbes themselves is where we understand that there is communication or chatter, if you will, between the gut and the brain. So it's extraordinary that this communication that's going on within the colon actually have an effect on our physical health, but also our mental health. We've got this communication, and some 80% of the signals go from the gut to the brain, and only about 20% of them are coming the other way. So it's interesting that a lot of the signaling is really coming through on the bugs that are there, and that's where the research gets pretty exciting to understand what's going on there. So just again, being mindful of time, I went over time for 2 minutes. I hope that answered that person's question.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. So yeah, we're just getting a lot of positive feedback. So I just really want to thank you for attending or for presenting tonight, and to thank everyone for attending. And just to remind everyone about the link that will be sent out if you were here with us live, to fill that out for the survey, and to fill out your mailing address if you would like the nut bucks, and also to remind you that you will get 20% off, Zahra, for your services.
That's correct. Yeah, those who attended the webinar tonight.
Awesome. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. If you want to find out about future events, you can visit our website at choicesmarkets.com. And if you want to send more questions, that your website was the Gut Loving Dietitian. Is it the Gut Loving Dietitian?
No, there's no there.
Okay.
So yeah, gutlovingdietitian.com. Yeah, and all questions are welcome there.
Okay, thank you so much for presenting tonight. That was wonderful. Such a wealth of knowledge.
Thank you for having me. Have a wonderful evening, all of you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.